Gero.
Who's asking?
I am.
Yeah? And who are you? I ain't Daguerre, alright? You got the wrong guy.
I don't think so.
You know what I think?
I don't care.
I think you should die!
Always the same.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of How to Be a Great GM this week. We are looking at it from two different angles. What are we looking at? Well, of course, we're looking at bounty hunters in your game. Now, there have been some requests on our Discord channel, it's discord.gg/GreatGM, about how to run a game for bounty hunters / law enforcement and how to play a bounty hunter. Now, I have done a video in the past on how to play a bounty hunter, and I was watching that earlier on, and it's always amazing to watch videos that you made decades ago, or in this case 3 years ago, and you kind of go, wow, goodness, okay, how things have changed. Nonetheless, the information has not. So this is not a rehash of that old video, this is new insight, and we're looking at it from both the player perspective, but also from the GM perspective. How do you run a game that involves bounty hunters? Now, why would you want to run bounty hunters in the first place? Well, bounty hunters, after doing a little bit of research, this is armchair research, of course, bear in mind, bounty hunters are still a thing. They still exist in today's world, mainly in the USA and in the Philippines, where they're called bail enforcers or bail agency enforcers, or there's another one called the fugitive recovery agent. All very nice terms, and they try to avoid bounty hunter because they haven't yet caught on that it's cool. As a matter of fact, there's a historical reason why they don't like using the word bounty hunter, as it was involved primarily in tracking down slaves that had escaped from the plantations and farms of US landowners way back in the Dark Ages. So, nonetheless, it is still an occupation that is viable today, and generally speaking, the bounty hunters will be paid about 10% of the outstanding bail, or of the bail amount that the individual is having to pay in order to have been released on bail, which they have now run away from. Interestingly enough, a South African is ranked as the number 6 bounty hunter in the world. He was a politician, and then he moved from South Africa to the US, became a bounty hunter, hunted some bounties, and then went back to South Africa. You go, well, there you go. Who says America isn't the land of opportunity? Anyway, so bounty hunting is a thing, and it can be a particularly exciting space to play in because there is a decided focus that starts to come into your campaign when you are running a bounty hunter game. It is the idea of get the bounty, track the target, find the target, apprehend the target, depending on what the bounty is, and then bring the target back to the boss, lord, owner, etc., etc., etc. Now, this could be legal or it could be illegal, depending on your group's playstyle and the like, and on how you want to position it from a moral perspective. What this suggests to me, however, is that you've got all 4 of the basic adventure types in a single bounty hunter adventure. You have the discovering. Where has this individual gone? Who are they? You have the collecting. I need to go and get this individual now from the territory. You have the delivering. I need to deliver it to the person. And throughout the entire thing, there is thwarting going on in terms of other subplots that you as the GM are going to introduce, because that's just how we do it. So it makes for a very dramatic space. Now, there are lots of TV series that deal with bounty hunters, both in Western contexts, in modern day settings, and of course in space, no names mentioned. And as you can see from those series, if you watch any of those series, there is always a wide variety of options that we are given in terms of running this game. As players, there is a fairly formulaic approach, which, although it does initially seem like it's going to be a wash, rinse, and repeat scenario, each scenario would or should be different if your GM knows what they're doing, hence why we're doing this video on how to do it. So the very first step in being a bounty hunter, of course, is getting a bounty. Now, players might not necessarily know how to go about it, so something that you're going to have to build into your world is somewhere where players can, or their characters anyway, can access the bounties that are available. This could be either as a commission from some legal entity or illegal entity, again, depending on your setting. It could be bounty boards, where bounty hunting is something that exists. In many science fiction games and scenarios and settings, there are bounty hunter guilds that you can belong to. So you could establish a guild, and the guild issues out contracts. In one of the games that I'm playing, which is in a fantasy setting called the Heroes Guild, which is effectively a bounty hunter guild, in the Heroes Guild, you have ranking within that guild, and you can only go after contracts that match your rank. And after having completed several of the missions at that level of rank, you then progress in rank to the next level. And you can hunt juicier and more difficult targets. It's an interesting mechanic which the players seem to cherish once they're in that space. So this is something that we need to step back a little bit before we continue planning. We now have the bounty for the characters, but what do we need to plan beforehand? Haha. Well, obviously we need to plan out the entire bounty as it stands. How do you do this without becoming overwhelmed? You might create an adventure that says, okay, this is a bounty to hunt Zuba, the tax evader, and I've planned out this whole mission, and it's worth 1,000 Deca credits. And you go, okay, well, that sounds like an exciting one. Then the players go, no, I don't want Zuba. No, I don't want a tax collector. I want something more. Something more dramatic. I want a war general who's escaping on a fleeing starship. I don't have that one. Well, you don't need to worry, because once you've planned out a single heist, the naming, the name, the species, the location, all of that is really just in your head. The players don't know it. So whether they want to go after Zuba the tax evader who's escaped, or General Thrag who is wanted for mass genocide, the players will choose whichever one they want. You are then going to adjust the names of the adventure that you have planned so that you don't then have nothing planned. And the players will not know that Zuba the tax evader was not on a battleship fleeing as fast as he could with the aid of his friends. Well, the General Thrag was not hidden and hiding out in a seedy hotel somewhere on a distant planet. They won't know. You're going to adjust and adapt. So that's the first thing to bear in mind, is you only have to plan out one of these that you can then use for the particular adventures. That's quite useful in that sense, where if you are a newer GM, this allows you to plan out adventures and to have the joy of planning out an adventure in such a way that the characters are most likely to approach it, which I think is really, really, really different from other kinds of games where you're not entirely sure where they're going to go or what they're going to do, and they have a fairly broad and carte blanche approach to deciding where they're going. Anyway, so that's how it is. So what you need to do is you need to plan out an adventure. You need to plan out a bounty hunt, basically along these lines, in my opinion. So firstly, you need to establish the bounty. You need to give the bounty to the PCs in some shape or form. Like I said, it could be a bounty board, it could be a law enforcement officer, it could be someone who has the means to pay for it. A private individual contacts the PCs. I believe you hunt down people. I will pay you 1 million Deca credits and you can go and hunt down these people. However you want to do it, you need to position how the PCs are going to get that particular bounty. You can be dramatic. You can have someone fall into the laps of the bounty hunters and say, I'm being hunted for the bounty on my head, but I'm innocent. I beg you, I will pay you to prove my innocence. It's still a bounty hunt, because the bounty hunters are now hunting down the information that will lead to the innocence of this person, or they're just going to hand them over and get the reward, and then you're going to give them another bounty. However it plays out, it doesn't really matter. You know the drill if you've been watching this channel anyway. So you then need to give them information that they will be able to access. Think of this as, I hate the idea of a trail of breadcrumbs, because that's the wrong way of looking at it. Think of it more as a paintball match. And by that I mean, you need to give your players pieces of information that may not have anything to do with each other, but which collectively will give the players the idea of where the bounty is. You don't want to say, oh, the bounty is holed up in Fort Shoutout, because, that's where he's holed up in. And you go, okay, we go to Fort Shoutout. Oh, he's there. Oh, no, you have to make it a search. You have to make it a track. They have to trace the individual. That's part of the hunt. They have to find where this individual is. So you want to throw out some clues, like, for example, well, they were last seen on this planet at this bar speaking to the waitress, and after that, no one knows where they went. That's one clue. So that's one splat of a paintball, if you like, on a white canvas. The PCs might not necessarily want to go there. They might say, well, as a matter of fact, we want to go to where he was last seen working, because maybe he has work colleagues who know where he's gone. So they're going to go to the work colleagues, and you then have to give them another splat of paint. The information that they will get at either of those two venues, by the way, should be very similar. It's just positioned in a slightly different way. They go to the hotel or the nightclub that he was seen at. They go to the waitress that he was seen talking to, and she says, well, no, he didn't say anything to me about where he was going, but I did see him looking at a brochure for a galactic cruise, and the name of the galactic cruise is the Red Star. If the PCs go instead to his workplace or to his home, they will find the same brochure for the Red Star, or a colleague who gives the information to the Red Star. What you have to be aware of is that your players are going to be looking in all different directions, and not all of us are going to look in the same direction. The clue needs to be in all those different directions. Don't try and get fancy and give them a little bit of this or a little bit of that. If you really want to up your game, if you really want to take it to the next level, after you have done this a couple times, the work colleague could mention that he was talking about a new shirt that he had bought, which has got solar radiation protection on it. And when they go to his home, they could find that he has left all of his warm clothes behind and has no other clothes at all in his cupboard. So he's obviously gone on a journey somewhere. And then when they go to the hotel, they get told about the Red Star, which then links together everything, because the Red Star has solar decks where people can sunbathe on, and that would require the new shirt, and it would also not require any of the clothing for cold protection and the like. So you can up it like that, but generally speaking, you want to have a whole bunch of opportunities available, because the players should be going in different directions. So as players, when you are starting to try and find out where this individual has gone, you cannot rely on the GM to then just tell you. You have to go actively looking. And that means you need to hit their place of work, you need to hit their place of socialization, and you need to hit their home, and possibly even their family members. And all of that information should be available to you if your GM knows what they're doing. And if you're a GM watching this, those are generally the 4 places that they should be sent to in terms of understanding where information is. Like I said, you don't have to have information for all 4 of them. You just have to know that they are going to go to those 4 different places. Of course, in another adventure, you change it up, and the bounty hunters are sent to simply observe this individual, because they might lead them to somewhere else. So that's something to plan around to advance your game as you move forward. Once you have done that, you need to then figure out, okay, so what actually was the flight plan of this particular individual? That's important for you as the GM, because you need to say, okay, well, this person would have bought tickets on this Red Star. They would have gone for a last drink with the waitress that they had a crush on, and basically to say goodbye. Then they flee. They get to the Red Star, but they're paranoid because that actually wasn't their final destination. They were there for at least a week, and the Red Star took them past a particular planet that they had organized to meet with some pirates on the Red Star. The pirates attacked the Red Star, and of course attacked the Red Star, extricated this particular individual from that Red Star. The pirates then, using their antiquated starships, there's a reason why they're antiquated, then travel back to the planet that this pirate base is based on. He was then offloaded there, which was absolutely fine, and that's potentially where the players might encounter this character to take him back, if you're running a short adventure. But if you're breaking it up into the 4 different categories, by the time the players get to the pirate base, having obviously tracked down the Red Star, interrogated the Red Star, and learned that they were under attack and several prisoners were taken, well, one prisoner in particular was taken from the manifest of the passengers, and then they get to the planet's surface, that is one adventure. That is the discovery adventure, and you should pepper that with combat in between and the like. So that is your discovery adventure. You then need your actual collecting adventure, which is now they're on the trail. So they're no longer trying to find where this individual has gone. They now know where this individual has gone. The pirates will say, oh, yeah, we sold him onto the slave ship Zugrat, and we know exactly where Zugrat is. We have no beef with you. Or, of course, if you want to make it more interesting, the pirates will fight back, and the last pirate will tell them about Zugrat's starship, and that's where this fugitive has gone. So then they will get and try and find the Zugrat. Now, it's not about finding the Zugrat in terms of the entire adventure. They will find the Zugrat. That should be the core of that particular adventure, because it's a collecting adventure, so they have to go there and get it. So in their journey to get to the Zugrat, They will be intercepted by Zugrat mercenaries. They will go through a nebula, which will cause all kinds of chaos and mayhem. They might have random encounters until eventually they get to the Zugrat. And then we get to our thwarting mission. Remember, we said we were going to have a thwarting mission in there as well, and that would then be the assault on the Zugrat. Now, this is where you as the GM, and whether it's on a Zugrat or it's in a police station or it's in a hotel, this is the next part that you have to take into account, is the location in which the bounty hunters will be moving in. Generally speaking, everything that we've been discussing so far has been the bounty hunters basically following along all the different clues and things that you've spattered about and that they're bringing together. Now they know where the target is, and this is the turning point in the adventure. It's a very strong, very obvious turning point within the adventure, and again, it gives us that opportunity to change this around when we are making further adventures, as we put that as our start. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Nonetheless, that is a major turning point, because now the bounty hunters, they know where the target is. They know that the target is in there. Generally speaking, the target knows that they're coming. So now it changes from being a chase. It's now no longer a chase. Now it is an infiltration and exfiltration operation. So the bounty hunters now need to be able to know what is inside that Zugrat spaceship, that starship, and how they're going to get in and how they're going to get out. If they're playing bounty hunters correctly, they should have a solid plan rather than just we're going to blast our way in and blast our way out, especially if they have to bring that bounty back alive. If they need to bring back evidence of the bounty hunter, of the target, I should say, then if they destroy the starship, they won't have any evidence. So you need to give them that requirement that they have to bring back physical evidence, DNA or a ring or a tooth or a whatever it might be. Certain bounty hunters used to bring back the heads of their enemies, which is particularly gruesome, but before forensic evidence existed, it's the only way really to show that you had killed a person. Nonetheless, you need to figure out how they're going to get in and how they're going to get out and how they would get that information. It could be one of the pirates that they attacked earlier on has a plan of the Zugrat starship because they were refitting it with new laser beams, or you know what I'm talking about. It could also be that on the journey to the Zugrat, they released some prisoners from the pirate raiders who were sent to try and stop them. You need to figure that part out in your head, but don't necessarily do it at the very beginning, simply because they might have a very different approach to that Zugrat. They might try and lure the Zugrat to a location to attack a very specific target, and then whilst it's attacking the target, they try and sneak onto the ship. Nonetheless, just figure out the basic approach that you would give them. It could be a weakness in their shields. It could be a sensor glitch. It could be, well, the Zugrat only scans every 10 minutes because it takes too much energy. So they have a 10-minute window in which to land in the Zugrat's open hangar bay. Make it interesting, make it exciting, figure out something different. If you really want to ratchet it up, maybe the Zugrat's scanners can't detect anything humanoid in size or smaller. So they have to fly past the Zugrat and jump out of the spaceship and fly through space to land on the hull of the Zugrat and hopefully get to a door where they have an access code, which is an old one, but it is, still acceptable. That allows them to get inside. Hopefully they've planned an entry plan and an exit plan, and you need to make sure that those are working. Now, if you're not too convinced that your plan of how they should get in or get out is going to hold mustard, and perhaps they've missed some of those vital NPCs that were going to give them that information, and you didn't have an opportunity to give that information with other NPCs, because remember, you can always transfer the knowledge that one NPC has to another NPC, the players will never know. All of that's been missed. How are they then going to get in if they don't have this information? Listen to the players. So if the players go into a discussion of, well, I think we should try and sneak in through the engine exhaust, because when they're not running, those exhausts are basically just giant entryways into the lower engine, and we can find an access hatch and get out through that hatch. You need to react to that and go, well, that's not a bad idea. So we're going to do that. We're going to let them get in on that exhaust hatch. If they don't plan an exit strategy, I would always advise that as the GM, you should very subtly explain to the players, perhaps as an AI, as an old television series that one of the characters is watching, someone comes in and says, always remember, it's more important how you get out than how you get in. That should be a key, because if the players storm onto this large ship and they just start shooting everything, there are so many ways in which people can be shut down, or even it's not a starship, if it's a Wild West type of situation and they storm into the OK Corral, there are hundreds of people who will shoot them and who will kill them by sheer volume of lead rather than by any kind of skill or capacity. So that's something else that's important to mind. This is a long video, by the way, but I think it's quite a rich environment in which we can play, and it's an environment perhaps we don't often play in. So that's why I'm giving it as much care as I can. Figure out how they're going to get in, figure out how they're going to get out, listen to the players. If they come up with something that remotely makes sense or is quite exciting or is quite daring, go with that. Now, one of the common ploys that people come up with, and it's so entrenched in our culture, it's almost like it should always work every time, is the whole, oh, we've brought a prisoner for you and he's in the manacles which we put on him or her or they, and they are going to we don't remember a bounty. Oh, didn't the captain tell you we're bringing a bounty on board? That whole deception of we're going to get ourselves captured and take the ship from inside. It's an old ploy, and it should work once. Remember, if the players leave anyone alive, something that's very important is for you to build up a reputation. The bounty hunters are all about reputation. Even our own bounty hunters in the real world have a reputation. Like I said, that South African was ranked in the top 6 bounty hunters in the world. You go, okay, that's an important thing. So you need to have that reputation precede them. Oh, they usually do this trick where they disguise themselves as prisoners and come aboard your ship and take you out. I'm not being fooled by that anymore. So says all of the other crime lords and targets that the bounty hunters will be now pursuing. So I think that's very important. Once you've figured out how they're going to get on, how they're going to get the target, and how they're going to get out, getting the target themselves, because it becomes either it's a thwarting mission. So they're trying to get the target, they're trying to thwart the target from escaping, overcome that target. That is a typical adventure scenario that you're playing out, where they're fighting through the ship or through the corral or through the streets of Manhattan, wherever it's set. And they are trying to get to the target. They get the target, they overpower the target. The target will be defended by strong friends, assumedly, or by cunning traps, or by holograms. You choose however it's going to be, depending on the particular target. Once they've got that target, the game then changes to a delivery mission, where they then have to get the target from that ship to the home base. Sometimes this doesn't even have to be a mission. It could just be they get on their ship, they sail back, and they hand over the target. If you want to play a more complicated game, however, as they're flying back, other bounty hunters could show up and say, well, now that you've done the tough work, we're going to take him from here. Thank you very much. It's easier to take him from a group of PCs, theoretically, than it is to take them from a gigantic ziggurat starship, or whatever the location might be. So there is that opportunity to then insert an entire adventure where they are now trying to keep their bounty alive whilst they try and escape and eventually get back to their other place where they get paid. Something that I cannot emphasize enough is that the bounty hunters should always be paid. If you are setting this game up that the bounty hunters are operating on a legitimate business where they are authorized by the state to operate, such as our real world bounty hunters, then they should get paid. There shouldn't be any haggling or negotiation. They should simply get paid straight up. And again, their reputation should improve and increase accordingly. That's the important thing, is that you must always be aware that that reputation has to be growing each time they succeed and shrinking each time they fail. Then they go on their next bounty. But what is important is to intersperse this, because bounty hunting, although yes, it's very specific and the player character should have a certain amount of a formula to their approach, it's also important to bear in mind that in whatever setting you're in, it's not just about bounty hunting. You are going to spice it up by having a side adventure which has nothing to do with bounty hunting. The reason for that is simply for intellectual enjoyment and to change things up a little bit. Another thing, of course, that should be involved somewhere in that line is that the bounty hunters themselves get a bounty on their heads and they have to go and clear their name, or, etc., 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 etc. So bounty hunting is, I think, a really exciting space. It's a really engaging space, which, as far as I'm concerned, it is something that we really, really need to explore more. And so there we go. That's my particular take on bounty. I love bounty hunters so much, by the way, that we have recently released, and is still on Kickstarter for the next few days, a bounty hunter TTRPG, which is pretty much all about bounty hunters in space, but in a very simple system. Link down below, so again, check that out. Anyway, hit the like button if you like this video, hit the subscribe button if you're going to play a bounty hunter campaign, and leave your comments down below. Have you run a bounty hunter campaign before? What are your thoughts on bounty hunters? Is this the gold mine in terms of how we should be thinking about running games? I think it is a very solid narrative in terms of planning almost any kind of adventure, to be honest with you. Nonetheless, leave your comments down below. I love reading them, and it helps all of us learn from each other. This week's video was brought to you by Penny Dragon Games. Penny Dragon Games have just launched their own Kickstarter, as a matter of fact. And I have to say, when they sent it to me, I read what was in it, and I was like, wait, sorry, is there a spelling mistake here? No, there actually isn't. They've just released Azendor's Vault of Tragic Treasures. That's right, Tragic Treasures. It's a 300-page book of 200 plus magical items that are... Some of them are great, some of them are really useful, some of them are not so useful, and some of them are really tragic, like the annals of history. The annals of history. It's so full of flavor text. It really is a lot of fun to look at, and there's descriptions, and there's all kinds of things that really go on in this book. That it is, if you like to use magic items, if your players like magic items, this is a trove of options for you. They come with origin stories, they come with different manufacturers in terms of the various makers of magical items, such as Azendor himself, and I can't think of a better option in terms of magical items than this particular version. They've sent me, of course, a proof copy to have a look at. Now, if you are interested in getting involved in Azendor's Vault of Tragic Treasure, they are looking for playtesters. So if you want to playtest, head on over to their, head on over to their Kickstarter, first of all, check them out there, back them if you are so inclined. But if you want to be a playtester, if you want to have input to see how these games, or how these books are put together, I should say, and how they're going to enhance our game, and have your say in shaping this amazing product, then they are looking for playtesters. So there is a link down below. Now, if you are going to be part of the playtest, obviously they're going to include your name and your players' names in the book itself. So it's a way of immortalizing your group, or at least the group you're currently playing with, of course, and then you get a free copy of the PDF. So check out that link to sign up for that playtest. Azendor's Vault of Tragic Treasure. Worth checking out. Until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.